these children are just kind of floating out in the legal ether.
Wow.
Completely disconnected.
Yeah. So you have all these embryos that have been created, children.
Mm-hmm.
Let's back up a step, because a lot of people that would see IVF as a good thing, and I know even in our political situation now, there's a lot of advocacy for everyone should get IVF, really as a response to the fertility crisis. So we should talk about that for a second, because we know that it used to be in 2009, 2.1 children per household were being born, and now that number's dropped to the 1.5 number and seems to be on a steady decline. Why do you think we're having such an infertility crisis?
Yeah, you've got to back way, way up for this question. Part of it is we are having a fertility crisis because there are environmental factors going on that are affecting fertility. But that's not the dominant reason why people have to pursue these kinds of interventions. The dominant reason is we are now trying to have children completely out of step with the way that our bodies are designed to have children. So women especially are highly fertile in their 20s and early 30s. But we've got Cosmopolitan magazine and sitcoms and all kinds of things, and just messages from universities or even like girl boss, celebrities saying, you don't need to have children in your 20s or 30s. This is when you travel, discover yourself, get your career in order. You can have children in your late 30s, in your 40s. You get magazine covers of people like, I was a mother at 44. Typically, that's not how it works. Like every woman who has had natural childbearing a little bit later, not when she's 20, knows that you hit 35, you are a geriatric pregnancy. It gets hard to have babies in your late 30s as a woman. And there's a lot of women who are not even married or even trying to have children until their late 30s or early 40s.
Right.
So it's not necessarily that we have a fertility problem. It's that we are trying to have children way past when our bodies are ready to have children. So part of what we need to do is tell people the truth, that if marriage and family and children are important to you, especially women, you do that first.
Yeah.
Do it before your career. And sometimes you don't get to choose. I know a lot of women who would have loved to get married and have children early, and it didn't work out. But there's some women who put it off because the world is lying to them. And then they either don't get any children or get fewer than they would like, and sometimes they have to go to a money-hungry fertility company, or they think that that's their only option if they are going to have the children they want.
Yeah, and you've done a good job of, I think, showing the big differences between a mindset of adoption. So someone who's saying, I want to grow my family, I want to have a child. A lot of people want to do that naturally. I mean, I think that's also inborn.
Totally.
That we want to have our
and it's
own
noble,
children.
And it's good, and it's healthy.
So to say, hey, you shouldn't do that, or we shouldn't take your egg or your sperm and start to create a child, I think it hits people pretty hard. Like, wait, why not? I've been told I should have children. Children should grow up in my home. But you get into the details of why this isn't best for the child. Even though they might be in a loving home, you've taken away some dignity along the way that we need to pay attention to because it needs to be honored, and we need to recognize how this works. So in surrogacy, I know there's 3 different mothers you describe that I'd love for you to just describe to our audience about how do they think about surrogacy, because I think that has implications back into the IVF concept of whether it's implantation or some other way in which a couple tries to go about having a child.
Yeah, this is a hard one for a lot of Christians and conservatives and pro-lifers because we love babies. And, we think surrogacy, and the picture that jumps to our mind is the sister who offers to carry the child for no money at all for her sister who has gone through cancer and is not able to carry the child herself. But the baby is then going to go back to their own genetic mother and father, and they're going to be able to know the surrogate, and no money changed hands. And that's what we think about when we think about surrogacy. Unfortunately, the way surrogacy is actually practiced is nothing like that at all. What surrogacy really is on-demand designer babies shipped worldwide. That's what it is. Like right now what's going on, for example, in California, which has one of the most permissive surrogacy and fertility laws, it's just a fertility Wild West out there, is about 40% of the babies that are commissioned through Californian surrogates are foreigners. The vast majority are from China, and 40% of those Chinese nationals that are commissioning children are single men over the age of 40. So what you've got here is you've got California women who are gestating babies whose egg maybe came from a white woman, we don't know, sperm of a Chinese man, who is then going to customize that child, implant only the ones that he wants. If he wants a boy or a girl, who knows, who cares, nobody asks. The baby's then going to be born. Oftentimes the man doesn't even come to the United States. The baby's flown back to China. But that baby is now a U.S. citizen, and he has a foothold into citizenship.
How much money is the surrogate being paid?
It depends. They get paid more in California, but if you need a bargain basement surrogate, you need to go to a country where the women are brown. So, I mean, like, it's just this surrogacy is largely banned across Europe because it is recognized as an exploiter of women and a commodifier of children. But what you will see around the world is poor countries with economically vulnerable women will open up their borders for the surrogacy industry and stay open 3, 4, 5 years and then quickly shut it down because they realize this is just exploitation. Right now, 25% of the global surrogacy industry is in Ukraine. Right? Why? Because those women, their husbands are dead or they're at the front. They've got no way of making money. Their economy has been devastated by the war. This is the one thing they can do, and there's no regulation around it at all.
Wow.
And so wealthy white foreigners will flock to places like Ukraine or Georgia. And now there's new markets opening up in Mexico and Nigeria where women who need money will rent their body out for 9.5 months, largely to wealthy white foreigners. So let's just talk about surrogacy from the child's perspective. Like you said, surrogacy is not just a way to help infertile couples have babies. Surrogacy allows you to splice what God designed as one woman, mother, into 3 purchasable and optional women. The genetic mother contributes the egg that gives the child their biological identity. The birth mother develops the bond with the baby for the first 9.5 months and lays the foundation of trust and attachment. And the social mother is the feminine presence that nurtures and loves the baby into adulthood. If you separate any of these women, the child will experience loss. And if the child loses any one of these 3, the child's going to experience lifelong struggle in some way or another, whether it's identity struggles, challenges to trust or attach, or the third would be like the developmental challenges that go along with mother deprivation. So unfortunately, there's no way to do surrogacy without child loss. And while, such as in adoption, there are tragic situations where children may lose their mother, we mourn it and then we try to mend it. Surrogacy is always the intentional loss of a child's mother, usually for commercial purposes.
Wow. Yeah, to just get our head around this 3 different factors that are in that child's life not showing up for them in a way that they've been designed to experience shows why they're the victim. And yet we think and only tend to perceive this as like a way to help, again, parents, adults get what their needs are. And so you're an adoptive parent. I'm an adoptive parent. You know, the process we went through to actually adopt was extreme. I mean, I remember the books I had to read, the seminars I had to take, things that were helpful, but there was a vetting process. I mean, the agency, you ran an agency. Your job was to keep the bad people out from getting access to children.
Right.
In this whole model of big fertility, is that happening anywhere?
We spend a lot of time at Them Before Us contrasting adoption and reproductive technologies. So the meta is that in adoption, the child is the client. If adoption goes well, every child that needs a loving home will be placed with a loving mom and dad. But not every adult who wants a kid is going to get one.
Yeah.
The goal is to make sure that the child has what they need, but that adults don't necessarily get what they want. So in big fertility, it's the exact opposite. The adult is the client. The goal is to get them a baby, or rather the baby they want in the way they want it at the time they want it, no matter the cost to that child or any other child. So you've got the child as the client in adoption. You've got the adult as the client in big fertility. In both of these situations, the child does experience a loss, right? They're losing a relationship with their mother or father. But in adoption, the adults are seeking to mend the child's wound.
Right.
In big fertility, the adults raising them are the ones who inflicted the wound, right? In adoption, adults are doing hard things on behalf of children. Like we went through screenings, background checks, home studies, vetting, post-placement reports, supervision, trainings, right?
Yeah.
All of that. And why? Because we were going to do hard things to ensure that the child went to a home that considered them their very own. And we're going to do whatever we can to make sure the child really is safe and loved. In big fertility, the child does hard things for adults. There's no screening or vetting or background checks. I wrote something at the Federalist earlier this year, I think, called 5 Child Predators Who Have Already Acquired Children Through Surrogacy. And these men got surrogate-born kids, and they would never have passed an adoption screening. But good news for them, there are none in big fertility, right? So the kids are doing hard things for adults, losing their life, losing their mother or father, and often going into households with high likelihood of abuse and neglect and risk. And then finally, we live in a broken world. Sometimes adoption is necessary because biological parents can't or won't raise the children that they made. And so a just society seeks to mend that wound by placing children in vetted homes. Big fertility, reproductive technologies, surrogacy, sperm and egg donation may be very wanted, but it's never necessary, right? So we spend a lot of time saying, look, adoption is an institution centered around the well-being of children. Big fertility is a marketplace centered around the desires of adults.
Yeah. I want to draw a connection because part of